go. All right. So we left off exploring retopologizing. Now, we're not using it to rebuild the character yet, right? There's probably going to be a little bit of rebuilding here, definitely some rebuilding there and there. But really, for this week, I just want to start by using it to create armor and gear, because that's one of the really, really neat things about or any retopologizing tools is obviously you can rebuild parts of a character if you need to, and we're going to be doing that with part of our model up here in the front specifically. But also it's great for just building clothing, gear, armor, right? Because the whole idea about retopologizing is that you can basically trace geometry, right, quads, onto another surface that don't have to follow the edge loops, right? That's what's really cool about retopologizing tools is they're super useful for all kinds of stuff. Like I said, rebuilding parts of characters or a whole character, although that takes a lot of time. That's why I don't do that. I box model what I can, and then I do a sculpt pass, and then I retopo just the sections I want. I've just never found most automated retopologizing tools are terribly reliable. So, and I don't really cherish the idea of retopping a whole character, particularly when I know Blender's got an excellent polygonal modeling tools and can get me a great core mesh really quickly and easily with box modeling. And I already have most of the edge loops I want. And then we just kind of rebuild the sections we do want to do. And we'll see that, later on. So, but for right now, we're just kind of warming you guys up to retopologizing and speed retopo through just building gear and armor. And that's also great to know as well, is that this is a great set of tools that can be used for all kinds of stuff, right? So now that we're in here, we can see that, of course, there is a retopo mesh, right? And so one of the things you can do is, of course, select on it. And you'll notice that speed retopo doesn't have a reference object right now. So what you could do is you just click on there, and you could pick quad body again, although it is set up for shrink wrap already, right? Remember, the speed retopo does set that up. Remember, it's just edit preferences, add-ons, and then you can go to install, and then wherever you've downloaded speed retopo, you select that and install, and it will show up in here, right? And you just make sure to check it on. Be like right there, check it on. And of course, you can always do the filter search, right? Because there is, at the very top here, a search bar. So you can always do that. But usually when you install it, it'll kind of show it. It'll automatically do kind of a filter for it and show it at the top so you can check it on. But add-ons are super easy to set up in Blender. And then just add a little bit of functionality. But remember, when you go to create it, and this is the first video had it, all that stuff, you'll see a start retopo here, right? You click on that with the body selected, and then it creates this new mesh called retopo mesh. It applies a mirror because mirror set to here. It applies a shrink wrap, so you see how those are already there and set up to be automatically on, right? You might want to check on clipping because I love clipping. It's so cool in Blender. But it does create those for you. I do like to turn my wrap method to near surface point and snap method on surface. Those of you I think be project and above surface. I just feel like these kind of keep it a little closer. Also, I found that the snap tool's on, and sometimes it gets weird, so I turn it off unless I really need it. And there we go. But you just make sure to select your retopo mesh again, quad body, and then you'll see, I've got tweak on, right? And I can just still go in here and do some tweaking, right? So I can grab that face. I can go to two for edge mode, right? And you see how it can just still work for us. Now, I can, of course, hit 1, and you'll see that this just allows us to still use our normal tools, right? So speed retopo is just kind of an interface for this, right? Most of the time, you can do this without any of these things, right? We can do a lot of this just through extruding, loop slices, bridging. In fact, we'll see some more of that. But remember, one of the cool things about this is the add B surface feature, right? That's using that annotate pencil right here, right? Now, if I just hit D, that actually goes to it. In fact, D toggles it through. So one of the cool things about Blender is many of the quick keys will actually just toggle you through all the options, right? So the very first one is what we want. And what we can do is we can just, kind of come in here, left-click drag to draw a line. And then I can just do left-click drag to draw another line through here. And you see how it draws that in there? Now, if I hit D until I see red, what you could do is come in here and erase a curve, right? And you'll notice one of the options is a straight line. So if you actually wanted to draw perfectly straight lines with the annotate, you could do that also. Now remember, when you draw these, you should draw them in the same direction, right? I started up here, drew it down, and then I started up here, drew it down. And then what we can do is we can go to Add B Surface, and you see it adds that geometry in there. This is what's cool about the really Speed Retopo all around, is that, you know, it sets up mirror and shrink wrap for you, and it gives you some kind of in-front wireframe stuff. I usually turn hidden wire off and backface culling on. Recalculate normals will kind of smooth shade the normals. But the real star of the show is being able to use the annotate brush like this to create geometry. That makes it pretty easy, particularly when you have a large section you want to redraw. Just go in there and right, and then boom, make a surface for them. What's cool though is if you just hit Q to go back to your tweak tool, or whatever selection tool you want, you're really just kind of back in tweak mode. I can tweak that vertex, I can tweak that vertex, I could go to 2 for edge mode, and I could select these 2 edges, and we can just bridge, right? Remember, right-click will bring up your options for edges, and one of those is bridge edge loops. Now, I have a quickie for it because bridge is quite useful, and you will often use it. So even though there's not a default quickie, I added one that made sense, Shift-B. The reason I use Shift-B is because bevel is Control-B, right? And you see how we could bridge? So remember, you can actually use Speed Retopo to kind of annotate to draw those lines on there, but you could still use all your normal modeling tools as well. So I could go in here and I could just grab this edge and Control-E for extrusion, middle mouse button, and just drag that in, and it snaps. Hit Q to go back to my tweak tool, because that's the current one I have as the default. Remember, if you toggle through, it'll switch to those, and of course, you can assign any one of those to quick keys also. So one of those great things you see is that, one, you can actually still do quite a bit of your retopologizing just with your normal modeling tools, right? Remember, I can actually just go in here and left-click there, and then shift left-click down here. Remember, if you go to the select menu, you have shortest path as one of your options. I have it set to X. And if you want, you can just hit W for move, and I could move this here. I could hit E for rotate, and I could rotate it. And see how the shrink wrap obeys that stuff? And so I can just double-click here, double left-click, right? Selects the whole edge loop. So sometimes you just want to select an edge, then here, and then use that shortest path. Shortest path does not have a default quick key, so you will have to set up your own. Remember, right-clicking brings up the options, and you'll see if there is no shortcut, it will say assign shortcut. If you already have one, you could change it. So doing shortcuts in Blender is super easy. And remember, things like your move, rotate, and scale actually obey the shrink wrap. And that's allowing this to stick to the surface. I could hit W for move. I can move it forward a little bit. And then I could always go back to my tweak tool and then just do some minor tweaks here where I feel like it's necessary. And you still sometimes you'll see how the snapping gets a little bit weird. That might be where you turn the magnet on. And you see how sometimes that works a little bit better. So most of the time I find snap annoying, but occasionally it's actually quite useful and it'll work pretty well. So I usually keep my snap faces off. You see how that's the face option. But I usually keep the snap off. But occasionally I do find the shrink wrap gets a little weird, even though most of the time the shrink wrap's doing great. So sometimes maybe you just turn that on. But the nice thing is when you start the Speed Retopo, it kind of turns a lot of these defaults on for you. That's one of the things I like about it. Besides the annotate and add B surface, it's kind of all these defaults it creates for you when you start it. There's this retopo mesh here. We'll see later on how we can actually kind of combine stuff later on. So retopo mesh, it kind of likes to have that as its default kind of naming convention for it. So if I do have a separate object, I'll join it to the retopo mesh. So that way it keeps the name. Right now we don't have to worry about that. That's something we'll see next week though. But we could see some of the neat tools and functionality. Remember also, if I go back and I hit D for annotate, I could also just come in here and left-click drag to draw this out. Right? So there we go. And if I hit Q to go back to tweak mode, and then 1 for vertex, I could select that vertex and then that one and do our range select, right? Our shortest path. Remember, I used X for the quick key for it. And add B surface. And you see how you can actually extend these, right? So I could have added several curves and it would have extended those out. So if you select kind of the vertices along a path, you can actually use B surface with that as well, which is super cool. I can go to 2 for edge mode, Control E for extrude, middle mouse button. And you notice we bring it in here. Auto merge is on, so you'll notice it should merge those together automatically. If it doesn't, you can always go to tweak and vertex and just kind of tweak those till they merge. Sometimes I find auto merge won't even work. So you might even just kind of grab 2, right click. If you're in vertex mode, and you can merge vertices at center, right? So you can always merge them manually. Auto merge works well often, but sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes you got to get a little bit in there manual. And then, of course, 2 for edge mode. I grab these 2 edges, bridge. And you see how we can use that kind of annotate to draw the main retopoed forms we want, right? But as we start to build up, we can slowly connect up with our normal tools, right? So in areas where you might find it's faster to do a bit of the annotate, take advantage of it, right? Like go up here, D for annotate pencil, and then I can just left-click drag to draw this, left-click drag to draw that. There we go. And you see I'm kind of making sure to keep them in the same kind of, I draw them in the same direction. And then, of course, I can hit Q, because that takes us to the tweak tool currently. 1 for vertex. And then I could, of course, select these vertices, shortest path. Add B surface. And in this case, you can actually see that it actually is going a little weird because I actually did draw those in a slightly weird order. So I might even want to just draw kind of this way, like so. So the order you do it in can kind of matter, right? I'll grab these. And then we could add B surface and see how it did it fine. So keep in mind the direction you draw and even kind of which direction you're going. So you kind of want to draw them this way out. Can affect it. So kind of the direction and the order can matter. All right, recalculate normals. And then, of course, we could just go in here, and if there's any areas where it's a little off, we could just tweak it a little bit. One of the really cool things that you will find, because shrink wrap is on, if I was to go to 5 for my sculpting tools, I can hold down Shift to smooth, right? And it'll actually stick to the surface pretty well. If you wanted to use grab, right, that could be a great way to kind of go in here and make some minor adjustments while smoothing. So even your sculpting tools can be a useful way to kind of soften or smooth out areas or make further adjustments. So you notice your sculpting tools will actually be usable on this with shrink wrap as well. So you can hit 5 to go to, edge mode or sculpt mode. And then, of course, we could easily just kind of come in here and say, hey, I want to start to connect these up a little bit more. And you see 3 will go to here, but I really kind of want to have 4. So remember, you could always just double left click, or sorry, go to 2 for edge mode, double left click to select an edge loop. Remember, that's our quiz today. Slide will even work on these, right? So if you hold down right mouse button and you go to edge slide, slide will obey things, the shrink wrap also. So pretty much all of your, just about all your standard modeling tools will obey shrink wrap pretty well. Like if I go to Alt C for loop cut, I can go in here and put a loop cut in. You see how it constrains to the surface. So all of those tools will work out pretty well. And I could go in here and I could just kind of, grab those 3, and then I could select those 3. I was just using shortest path. And then, of course, Shift B for bridge. And then, of course, I could come in here and I could still do some tweaking, right? So we come in here, make a little adjustments. Alt C for loop cut. There we go. And remember, we could even, switch back to our tweak tool and bring this down a little bit. So see how we can kind of continually adjust these things. And then I could select these 2 edges, bridge. And you see we're slowly kind of building up our own kind of cool retopoed mesh right here for our armor or our gear. And you see the overall workflow works pretty great. Speed retopo works pretty reliably. And it gives you a nice combination of being able to do the annotate to kind of draw the curves on and then add B surface. Remember, you want to draw the curves from all the same direction, right? So left to right, left to right, left to right. But you also, particularly if you're doing the connect one that I showed you, it should be kind of draw the first curve closest to the mesh and then outward, right? You follow those rules and you're in pretty good shape. The rest of it's just the normal modeling tools we've been using before. Tweak, move, rotate, scale, extrude, bridge, loop cut. These are all useful tools that can allow us to work. And we can even hit 5 for sculpt mode. And if we set up grab, so I can kind of come in here and tweak these and then hold down shift to kind of smooth it out a little bit. And it does a pretty good job of sticking to the surface because of that shrink wrap. So kind of the shrink wrap is one of the workhorses of these features, right? So you can see right there how effective, so I'll go back to like 3 for face mode, how effective speed retopo is with just the normal tools. Even if you didn't have speed retopo, as long as you applied mirror and shrink wrap with these on, you'd be good. You'd still be able to use all of your normal modeling tools and sculpting. So in fact, the only thing speed retopo really offers is just this nice interface for it. And it kind of automates some of these things. And it kind of lets you use the annotate with the add B surface. And you can kind of play around some of these settings for visibility and recalculate normal. So it's just it's doing what Blender already has, but it's kind of created a nice interface and some automation for it, basically, right? And that's what's great about it, right? So you already have a lot of this great functionality in Blender, and sometimes you just need a little bit of extra add-on to kind of build that interface for it, right? But yeah, fan of speed retopo. It's pretty cool. All right, and now you can see we've got gear and armor. I think we might want to do a little bit more when we come in next week on that. Before we get to stuff, we're really going to spend several days retopologizing because I really want to get you guys several videos for it, get you guys a lot of lecture for it. But the nice thing is this is it. That's really how retopologizing works, right? You're using a lot of the tools you already have and know for normal modeling. And now you just know that the annotate and the B surface and some of these things can be really, really useful to allow you to retopologize pretty easily. All right, like I said, I think that'll probably be a great place to stop our video for today.